think especially coming out of the supplement corner, it's this like Pilatesification of everything. Like I have absolutely nothing against Pilates. Like if you love doing Pilates, please by all means do it. But so many supplement brands like lean so much into this, let's call it Pilates aesthetic at the moment. And using the woman who does Pilates as like the one and only marketing creative that they can come up with to sell any sort of supplement. And it just takes so much away from how broad and exciting exercise can be, because not everyone loves the same thing. But I feel like just like we all got pressured to like go running to lose weight a while ago, now I feel like all women collectively get pushed into doing Pilates because it's like the one and only form of exercise to get the one body type, allegedly, that's trending right now. And I don't know, it's not really helping women or people in general to experiment a bit and find a form of moving their body they can actually fall in love with and then do for a very long time.
Welcome back to Plant Field Legends. As always, I'm your host, Callum Webb. The supplement industry has built an entire economy out of people not knowing how to argue back. Proprietary blends that nobody can interrogate. Protein powders with higher marketing budgets than actual protein. Gender-specific products that exist for absolutely no reason other than pink packaging sells. And a regulatory environment so toothless that basically you can put whatever you want on a label and no one's going to stop you. It is, to put it generously, a disaster. And the people selling you this stuff are largely counting on the fact that most consumers don't have a clue, let alone a chemistry PhD. However, our guest today, Anna Falk, does. She's also the founder of WAM, and she spent years building a supplement brand on the radical premise that what it says on the label should actually be what's in the product, which sounds like the absolute minimum requirement for selling food, supplements, whatever, to humans. And yet here we are having to celebrate it. This conversation goes in places that I didn't expect. We get into how protein powder is actually manufactured, what proper third-party testing actually looks like versus what most brands are doing instead, why proprietary blends exist, and what they are specifically designed to hide from you, and what the supplement industry in general that should genuinely make you put the thing down and walk away. We also get into the leucine threshold, muscle protein synthesis, the sucralose debate, creatine stability, electrolytes, bioavailability, and a specific category of gender-targeted supplement marketing that is not only just scientifically illiterate, but should probably be illegal. If you've ever stood in a supplement shop, reading a label and had absolutely no idea what any of these things meant, this episode fixes that. And if you've ever brought a woman's weight loss protein powder, this one is specifically for you. Sorry in advance. Not sorry. Before we dive in, I just want to thank every single one of you for supporting the show over time. If you haven't already, if you could like, subscribe, give a star rating, give a review, whatever the platform you're listening on allows you to do. Help support me, helps the show grow. And that 10 seconds means that this can get to someone who is currently being sold a Fat Berlin Collagen Super Blend for 38 quid and has literally no idea. Help them out. Go on. Anyway, let's go to Anna Falk. Let's dive in. Anna, welcome.
Hello.
So before we jump into anything, I saw that you did something I've been trying to bully Sarah into doing for the last few months, which is Hyrox.
Oh, yeah, I did that. I tried it.
How was Hyrox for you? Because I know for a load of people hate it, a load of people love it. But you did a doubles, didn't you? It wasn't just a singles one.
Yes, I did a double with a friend of mine, and it was fun. Like, I enjoyed myself. I'm not sure if I would do it again, to be honest. I would probably do similar formats, but not necessarily Hyrox again. Because now I've done it once, and it's never changing. And I'm not one to chase PRs.
The course is the same as well, no matter what country you go to. It doesn't change, unlike, let's say the CrossFit Games or anything else like that, where you might not know what you're getting. It's kind of a pre-done course.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more of an endurance event than like strength. And I'm definitely more on the strength side of things. So I'd rather like jump back into CrossFit competitions than doing another Hyrox, I think.
I was actually going to because you were doing doubles, did you take on more of the strength or more of the endurance, or was it kind of just a mixture of both?
So in the endurance part, you don't really have a choice because you always run the lap together. And then we just split it 50-50.
Yeah.
That was the easiest to handle.
Yeah, there's a few people I know that they a good part of them is kind of like, hey, I'm just going to take on the majority of the strength, and then the others take on the rest. But also it is just full of a lot of topless guys as well, majority of the time.
Yeah, definitely.
What time did you get?
We came in just under 1.5 hours, which was quite a nice surprise because we had no expectations like for ourselves. It was for both of us the first time doing it. And I'm, as I said, not really an endurance athlete. So I was like, the run's going to be the toughest bit for me. So we paced that quite slow, but then we literally like raced through the stations. So our time in the end was okay, I guess. I have no idea. I mean, if you go in without expectations, there's nothing that can go wrong.
Yeah, I feel like you probably actually like, because I feel like an hour and a half is quite good. Like the people that manage to do it in under an hour are insane.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know how, especially when you get to things like balls to the wall and things like that. I'm just like, this is just the capability to do like 100 of those, for instance. I want to die thinking about it.
I think you have to have a capacity for suffering.
Yeah. What was the worst part for it?
Let me think. I don't even think I had like a worst part. I thought the burpee broad jump bit would be the worst part for me, but we actually made it through that quite quickly and unscathed. I can't really tell. Like the whole thing was enjoyable, which probably means we didn't go hard enough, but oh well.
But at least it was enjoyable as well, because I feel like you can either go like, real hard and kind of push yourself and it's not enjoyable. You've just done it for the kind of like glory of getting the best time possible. And that kind of, it's the same as people doing like half marathons and marathons. Yes, I get that you want a new PB, and like I'm also a sucker for that. But also sometimes when you're doing that, it takes away the enjoyment of it as well. Because I'm like, oh, I need to go faster than I physically can. And maybe tie myself up and then put myself in a worse position later on down the line.
Yeah, I've been there in sorry. Yeah, I've been there in CrossFit competitions where it was a team of 4 and I was the weakest link in that particular workout, and then just like dragging myself through it for the team basically, and it was not enjoyable. Like I really wanted to quit, and luckily for me that one event was also the last event of the whole competition, so there was nothing after, but I was so happy to just be done with it.
I can imagine. And how were you like? How were you fueling yourself for it? Did you take like the fueling seriously? Because I know obviously when I look at your Sunday meal prep stories that like they always look amazing. But is it like, were you strategically fueling with like, either carb loading or having like a split of like, protein, carbs, and then like a tiny bit of fat? Or was there no kind of like real thought process into it?
I'm not one to overcomplicate it usually, especially, I mean, if we're talking about CrossFit competition, you do not really know what happens until like very short beforehand. So I don't know if they make me go out on a 5K cross-country run or if it's going to be like a 5-minute sprint event. And I just usually, I mean, my breakfast never changes. I'm super boring in that regard. I have my little protein oats with fruit in the morning, literally every day. Sometimes I like throw them in a blender and make pancakes instead, but that's the level of variation. So that's an easy one. And otherwise it's more the intra-competition fueling. Like I make sure that I have carbs after the events to like be ready for the next one quite quickly, rather than put too much effort in like the pre-competition nutrition. But I'm a sucker for carbs anyway, so I don't think I don't think my glycogen stores are ever really low.
Yeah, I just say like the boring breakfasts are the best breakfasts though. Like me and Sarah have the same like 4 things on rotation, just
well,
maybe
at least
different
you
flavors
rotate.
of the same thing. Yeah. It's easy. It just takes away the kind of like thought process. But I'm guessing also you're fueling yourself with a certain protein powder, which was your own protein powder.
Yes, it's my own. It's been for the last 2 years. And what month is it? June, 3 months? No, I can't calculate. 2 months.
That's insane. Like, because obviously I only discovered you through Sarah, and then it's become my go-to protein powder anyway. Because one, it's tasty. 1. 2, it's not too sweet. 3, is just a good protein powder in comparison to. I get sent a lot of protein powders, for instance, from like from the States and other places, and especially when it comes from the States, they're like the sweetest things possible. They are they're great, it's nice, but some people overcomplicate protein powders. Some people make them too sweet, or they're kind of like, or try to make them as clean as possible, and then it has zero taste, or kind of like taste a bit chalky, or a bit like cardboard. And whereas when I first tried yours, I think it was only vanilla, banana bread, and hazelnut that I tried, and I think they're the 3 flavors that you have. 4 flavors.
Coffee there is.
Yeah,
as
and
well,
coffee. Yeah. Like, and they were just, in comparison to others, very superior, I guess, in comparison, especially what we get in England.
Thanks. Yeah, I basically did what I did in terms of flavor and taste because that was something I was really looking for, and I just couldn't find it. Like all of the big brands, the major brands, I'm not gonna throw names out here, but you probably all know who I mean. They're usually really sweet and the flavor is very intense. And I actually get it. It's like, when you get a new flavor and you have the first sip or like your first shake, you're like, oh, this is amazing. It just tastes just like a dessert. But then after a few days, you're kind of over it. It's like, okay, this was fun, but now it's time for a change. And then you end up with like 10 open bags of protein powder with all of these different flavors because you kind of have to rotate through them. Otherwise, your palate just goes on strike. And that was one thing that bothered me. The other thing was with the sweetness and the intense flavor, it kind of gets hard to mix it with anything. I rarely actually drink a protein shake with just milk or water or whatever. I usually have it in my oats, or I make a smoothie, or I pop it into some protein muffins, whatever. And it always felt like such a waste when you use like nice fresh strawberries in a smoothie with some vanilla protein powder, because you think, vanilla goes with everything. And then all you can taste is this artificial vanilla flavor. So yeah, that was my motivation flavor-wise to just do something differently. Not to speak of all the like more organic leaning brands, as you said, they just taste like cardboard mostly. And I wanted to find like a nice middle path of like, it has to have a nice flavor. It has to have like the tiniest amount of sweetness to bring out the flavor, but not enough to actually make it this candy, sweet dessert replacement thing that most protein powders are.
Did you have to kind of research other brands and buy a ton of different protein powders to kind of try to see which ones were the best, or you just kind of went in there kind of blind without kind of trying, or kind of, I guess, doing that kind of like market research of just trying everything out there, especially in kind of like Europe and Germany?
I mean, as I was using protein powder for years before starting my own brand, I was trying through a bunch of brands. And then I knew which flavor profile I had in mind. And I didn't over test other brands, because I think there comes a point where if you start to try too much and then you get this idea of like matching something else in flavor, it might bring you off that path you have selected for yourself.
What makes you want to start one though? Because like there's so much competition out there. Like, I guess trying to establish yourself in like what could be perceived as an oversaturated market, especially when it comes to protein powders, whether that be whey, whether that be plant protein, whether that be creatine, because those things are on the rise constantly. And I think especially in the last three years or so, they've got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's, I don't know, as I don't run that sort of brand, but in comparison, I would assume it's more of a very oversaturated market to try kind of step into and take control of.
Yeah, I guess I'm serving a little bit of a niche, especially with the flavor profile of my powders. But there was a big other motivation for me, which is just the way that most of these brands do their marketing. Like, you still have the very stereotypical, like, big buff gym bro on the one hand, and you have like your little slim cardio bunny on the other side. There's a lot of pink washing going on in the industry. Like, there's a lot of like even within the big brands, like a women's line, and then they add like some obscure vitamins or minerals to the protein powder, and they increase the price and they market it to women when there's no actual proven benefit to women in there. They all operate under the assumption that women want to slim or tone, and all the men want to be like as buff as possible. And in my experience, there are just a lot of people that are not attracted by this kind of marketing and this kind of sales strategy. And there's even people that are very confused by it, because if you look at the way protein brands are marketing like whey protein, you mostly see like buff dudes. So women think, oh, this product is not for me. I will look like this if I take this. I don't want to look like this. I better not. And then they gravitate towards this like pink label women's toning protein with like bullshit in it and just pay more for the same. And yeah, there's just so much misinformation. There's so much marketing based on some stereotypes. There's so many people that are being left out by this way of advertising products and spreading information. And all of that for me was just like, yeah, a problem to fix maybe, or something to address and do differently.
I totally get that because, for instance, prime example of this is my mom, who I've over time got her into protein powder, but because, for instance, the protein powder you normally find in the supermarket comes in a giant tub, the branding is kind of a bit metally looking, a bit kind of like gym bro, looks like you're just going to be like squatting whatever, or the fact that like it's got, you know, a guy with a giant six pack on the front, that's clearly on steroids and didn't get it from just protein powder. There is such a variety of those everywhere, especially when you go and see these kind of like the bigger brands. I'm obviously not going to mention names. And it can be off-putting because I think, you know, if I do this, I might get, I know this is something that probably pisses you off as much as it pisses Sarah off as well, is the fact that you might become bulky if you take, if you take these supplements. But also at the same time, you go to the pinkwashing ones, and it's always someone that's, you know, lean, very skinny, and kind of like this 90s diet culture of this is the ideal look for a woman, and there's no in between. There's no in between for men or for women. It's very much what's wrong with just being, you know, slightly muscular and, you know, or more muscular than the usual, but not to the point where it's kind of too far the other way. There's no in between. It's both sides mental.
Yeah. And I mean, then you also have these protein powders that are advertised to women with like, oh, this is low carb. It's like, well, it's a protein powder. Why would it have a high carb content?
I actually, I got sent a chocolate one of those a few weeks ago, and it was it's called a skinny shake. And I looked at the macros, and it was the same as every other one they did. But it had women on the front. It had pink branding. It had a variety of vitamins and minerals that probably weren't needed. And it was like for toning, slimming, and, you know, like diet cuts. And I'm like, it's fucking same as your chocolate protein powder, just completely, just in different packaging. It's kind of like, but people will buy into that as well because it's more appealing instead of, you know, the either two, because also you get the ultra skinny girl or the big guy, but also then there's the, you know, people with like a measuring tape around their waist as well.
Yeah. And then, I mean, maybe also the attraction of, look, it doesn't only have protein, it also has like all of these added vitamins, where people ask me as well, oh, why don't you add vitamins or something to your protein powder? And I'm always like, well, not everyone needs to supplement every vitamin. And for some vitamins, it doesn't matter. You literally pee them out. But then there are some you really also don't want to over ingest. And I understand the idea behind fortifying a vegan protein powder with something like B12, but B12 is in so many things already. Most vegans I know already supplement B12. My brand, for example, is used by a lot of non-vegans as well. They potentially don't need it. So I just do not see the benefit. I think people are way better off getting their blood checked and supplementing what they need specifically, rather than having an all-in-one product and potentially wasting money and overloading themselves with certain vitamins.
Oh, completely. And I think that's when it comes to the supplement industry in general. Is very much people are supplementing things for the sake of supplementing things, and not necessarily because they're deficient. They're just supplementing because they think they may be deficient, but never had anything checked. There's people I speak to that are like supplementing vitamin C, and I'm like, an apple would do the same. Like an apple would have done the same. Maybe a vegetable just once in a while would completely do the same thing as give you a vitamin C. You don't need that supplemented into a protein powder. You don't need it supplemented in unless you've got scurvy, maybe,
Yeah, well,
or like you are in a situation where you can't get enough. But that's so rare.
it's like, have you sailed the high seas recently?
Yeah, it's really, we're really playing into the supplementing for the pirates.
Yeah, but the industry lives off people like that will just buy whatever you tell them they need, or tell your influencers to tell them they need. I think my brand could have grown so much faster if I would just play into this like classic stereotypical marketing as well, but it's something I absolutely refuse to do. I'm probably the worst marketer and salesperson ever, but all the posts I put out as well, I'm trying to like really just honestly inform people, and they always die off. Like I've never had a viral post in my life because it's just not sensational enough.
I think that's the thing as well. Like, especially when you're being honest about a brand or a protein powder, and you don't really have any. Obviously, you have financial gain as your own business, but like you're not trying to please anybody, or like you don't have any stakeholders like involved. So you kind of, it's to yourself and how you want to do it. But all these other brands do have stakeholders or investors, and they need to make the money. So they have to kind of lie, make it look kind of, oh, like, is this going to be better? Like, if we stick this in, is it going to sell more? If we're going to stick some ashwagandha in, or like horny goat's weed or whatever, it's very much, is that going to sell? Whereas I think as well, like, honesty and being, transparent also doesn't always sell, but it will sell later on down the line. It's just kind of that pushing forward.
Yeah. And I guess, the basics of nutrition are just boring. They're not really what sells. You probably know it from your side as well as a nutrition coach. Like, it's super boring to tell people to just eat their fruits and vegetables and their protein and get enough sleep and maybe move 3 to 4 times a week. It's not sensational, but
I feel like I could probably make a ton of money if I scaremonger people into thinking that they don't do enough, which is what a lot of people in my industry do. This is what people in your industry do. It's very much, if you scaremonger people into doing things, they will do it. But like, the boring truth is, if you eat a varied diet, whatever, if that's omnivorous or, whole foods, plant-based, or vegan or whatever, as long as you're eating varied amount, the right amount, and enough to sustain your body and, not live off beige food constantly, then it's realistically, it's not that hard.
yeah.
But it's overcomplicated with, you go online and you see the new, like, someone walking through a supermarket topless shouting at like vegetables, and you're like, oh my God, maybe I am missing, some elk spleen from the Himalayas has been blessed by a monk. Maybe I am missing that. Maybe.
Yeah. Or maybe I have to replace every other meal with some sludge from this company, from this brand, because it's better for some reason that someone made up in a boardroom.
But, I think also later on down the line, people want more transparency, because I think we're also getting oversaturated with the fact that, there's so much bullshit online, that later on down the line, people will start kind of see through that. And then the more transparent brands like yours will have that kind of like day, although it's already having its day as well. But I think people want that transparency these days. It's not so much how much can we scaremonger, although that is still a thing, but people wanting more honesty, more truth to what's going on, because the last 3 years has been a wild ride, I'd say, in nutrition, in fitness, in the wellness world.
It's been insane. For me, the most insane thing is this rise of carnivore that we saw over the last year or so.
I feel like they're the ones that seem to comment on your posts on TikTok. It's always the carnivore bros. It's always the person with no profile picture commenting the same things over and over again. Like, I see it with mine, but I also see it on yours as well.
I think that there must be an alert that's set up. Like, as soon as you mention the word vegan, your popping up somewhere in the carnivore universe and they just unite under your posts.
Yeah, I know there's definitely Reddit feeds for it where they post a certain influencers or certain, nutritionist or whatever's link to the video in carnivore communities, and they just go for it. I don't know if I've actually been subject to it. I just think I've just end up on the wrong part of the algorithm sometimes. But I know there's quite a few people that, have that.
Yeah. And on Instagram it happens, but I feel like TikTok is just a minefield.
TikTok is horrendous. TikTok is absolutely horrendous for it. It's full of the worst people. And I get ripped into constantly on that. And I've seen some of the comments on yours, and sometimes I do like to kind of respond to like your random comments or something kind of with something a bit, it's normally the same kind of guys doing it. So I'm just like, the Cheeto bedroom sheets, all those people.
The best is when they run out of actual arguments and then they just take a screenshot of your face from the video.
In the worst position. Yeah. It's kind of like you're moving in the video and they get you like turning to your side. It's like, I'm like, okay. If that's all you got, that's fine. Like, I'm good with that. Does it make it easier to have a protein brand or know, I guess, what you're doing? Because obviously you have a background you've got a PhD in chemistry. So I'm guessing that helps you understand what's actually needed in the protein world more than a lot of the people that are realistically, a lot of influencers just creating a protein brand instead of actually having the necessary knowledge to create and develop.
Yeah, I guess it helps. It's not rocket science. You could probably read up on it. I just, due to my background, probably have an easier time reading up on it and getting the main concepts. I can talk very directly and very freely to my manufacturing partner, who also has food scientists in their labs, when we work on formulations, like be it the base formulation, like which proteins do we combine, do we add any amino acids, how do we modify the texture, the flavor, and so on. So I would say it definitely helps. It helps to have a healthy interest for it and like keep up to date with nutrition science that's out there. But I wouldn't say that you should only start a protein brand when you have a PhD in chemistry.
It's definitely helpful in comparison to some of the ones that you see that also start a lot of shit about what is needed for the body when they have zero understanding of, what the body needs or what should go into something.
Yeah, I've seen a very, very big influencer, I think she's French, launched her own whey protein powder recently. And the 1 kilo is, I think, €100 because it's allegedly like ultra filtered or whatever, better for you.
Of course.
Yeah,
anything to make it sound better. And that's the thing, that a lot of them are kind of, it's this, and this. And I'm like, but I think that just regulatory standards that it should have, putting that on the front is just, yes, it's probably a selling point. If people don't understand that is not I don't know what the regulations are in the States. They are not as, in comparison to the EU, where we look into everything.
Yeah, there's the whole testing, like all the raw materials have to be tested in the first place before they go into a food, and then you can test it again after mixing before the filling, and then you can test it again after the filling, but it won't change much. But yeah, everything that goes to market in the EU, at least in terms of your residual pesticides, heavy metals, microbiological testing, that is done on the ingredient level already.
Yeah, is third-party testing like one of the things that needs to be done in the EU in comparison to, because that's a selling point in the States. So it's like third-party tested for lead, but also lead was a huge thing. Obviously, that controversy came out. What was it, this year, last year, end of last year? I think it
pops up every few years. I think it's on a 2-year cycle or something like that. That it keeps popping up. It has a lot to do with the California regulation for heavy metals that has thresholds that are so low that if you would go into a supermarket and pull stuff that grows in soil, like a carrot or something, it would probably be over the allowed levels as per that regulation because it's set so insanely low.
That's the thing, like where the standards are so low that everything contains something that may kill you. Like you go to that, and that can be anything, like even the healthiest things, because so if you go to California and you go into a supermarket, when you get to the till, they have a list of things, or the checkout, have a list of things that you may be purchasing that may cause cancer, may cause whatever. Like even picking up the receipt is like, it has BPA, so this may cause cancer.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very much like, no matter how much testing somebody does, that is always going to be maybe trace amounts, especially in places like the States.
Yeah, and I mean, the testing is also incredibly precise nowadays. So there's like the huge thing about like, this was not detected, but whether something gets picked up or not depends on the sensitivity of your test. So I can go and run the test on a machine that's like old and crappy and say, oh, look, I didn't find anything. Or I can go to like the new standard machine and it will of course pick something up. So we have to work with the threshold values that are set by, for example, the European Food Safety Association, and then just make sure that we are under those, because they're calculated in a way that if a person eats this in an amount that a normal person would consume this product, the value isn't high enough to cause any damage.
It also must be a minefield as well, because I guess when you are creating something, you have to go through so many different regulatory systems to actually get something onto the market. We would hope so anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I work with a manufacturer that they have their own labs. They use third-party labs as well. They're thoroughly certified when it comes to GMP, ISO, HACCP, and so on. So for me, there is like another party that is in charge of all of that, and I know they're doing it, and they're doing it very well, which is part of the reason why I decided to not start like many others would probably start and like buy my own ingredients and mix this in my kitchen or something and then start selling it to see how it goes.
How does that work? Because this is what I actually wondered earlier. Because if somebody's making their own in their kitchen, I don't know how you get like a protein isolate to begin with. I'm assuming you can't just do that in your kitchen. You can't just kind of like blend, let's say, quinoa and soy together, and you've got the isolate. But how do you get isolate? But also, like, I guess, how does protein powder come into existence? Because it's not just blended up. Well, as far as I know, it's not. It could totally be blended up soy.
It depends a little bit on the raw material you use, like if you use a bean or rice or whatever. But in general, the first step is actually like grinding it into a flour. And then you would add a solvent. It can be water, it can be ethanol, depending on which technique you apply. And the goal is to, in the end, remove all of the carbs, all of the fiber, all of the starches from the mix and really end up with the pure protein. And as I said, depending on the raw material, there's different ways to do it. Depending on the producer, there are different ways to do it. And you end up with a protein, concentrate or isolate, with a higher or lower concentration of residual fiber, starches, and so on. And that will impact how it tastes and how it feels in your mouth as well. So you have different suppliers offering different protein isolates of different qualities. And then you have to try them and see which one has like the least off taste or like the best mouth feel and so on, to then decide, okay, moving on with this in the product.
So it's not one of those things somebody could, or could someone potentially do that in the kitchen if I wanted to go out there and like kind of like start blending up soy? Because I wouldn't even know the difference between obviously what the things look like in the powder or flour form to kind of start like taking away.
I don't think it's something you would do yourself or anyone would do themselves. I think this is something like, if you say you make your own protein powder, you would probably start with buying the protein isolates and then get onto mixing. But you wouldn't start with buying a whole bunch of peas and then extracting the protein out of them.
But that's always how I wonder, because I've seen people online being like, hey, I made this from scratch on my own. I'm like, if you're doing that, like, obviously you're bypassing everything. How safe is that? Because also you've done that in your kitchen. I don't know what you're doing in your kitchen or how clean the kitchen is or anything else like that. But we're only taking into account this is definitely some influencers or so-called influencers that are apparently doing this.
I mean, quite often when I see this, like, oh, you can make your own protein powder, it's literally just people grinding up some nuts and seeds, and then they call it a protein powder, but it is ground up nuts and seeds.
This happened years ago that I was in Australia in a supermarket looking at protein powders there while I was staying there, and some lady walked up to me. She was like, "Hey, you can make your own version of this." And I was like, "Oh, can you? How?" I didn't tell her anything about me at all. So, and yeah, she was like, "You just get some like pumpkin seeds and some hemp seeds, just blend it up, and just stick it in some water or some soy milk, and you got a protein powder." I was like, "That's definitely not how it works," but I'm just going to let you keep believing that. I don't want the conversation with a random Aussie in the middle of buttfuck nowhere to like have this, because it's not a conversation worth having sometimes, especially like on a one-off occasion.
No, I have to say the only way that I would accept where someone says you can make your own protein powder is when they just grind up the soy chunks, because that already is a fairly isolated soy protein. So you can throw that in a blender and then you have some sort of protein powder. It probably doesn't taste very nice. Maybe add some cocoa powder and like some sugar or something, you might get something drinkable, but I think it would still be quite earthy.
Yeah, I can't think of anything worse than actually grinding up soy chunks. Like, I love soy chunks. I love soy curls. However, the thought of grinding those up and putting them in a drink is not worth my time at all. I'd rather just eat it the way it is, because it's very much just the solid form of a protein powder, without the flavor.
And it's also, I mean, there's people who then worry about ingesting like too much, I don't know, flavoring or gums that are in protein powder or in most protein powders. But it's like, is a protein powder, you use it maybe once a day, maybe twice a day if you use a lot. You're not basing your entire nutrition on it. You can optimize things to a certain point, but then you also have to be realistic about like the use scenario. And I think people sometimes maybe get too scared of things that are absolutely no danger, or like obsess over the wrong things, like some aroma in the protein powder, when then they happily go out and have 5 pints in a night,
Exactly the same conversation that I have with people, where they're kind of, "Hey, I can't have this certain ingredient in here because it's really bad for you." And I'm like, "But what's bad about it?" They can never tell you what's bad about it. But also, I think we once again, we're getting scaremongered, on certain ingredients because they may not be the best for you. But also, unless you're ingesting crazy amounts, it's not good. It's the same with aspartame, for instance, in like Pepsi or Coke, Diet Coke. Like, unless you're drinking, I think it's like 12,000 in a day, which I think is impossible. Then it's not going to kill you. It's relatively safe.
Yeah, I think the whole industry is doing itself a disservice there, because I feel like every few years one ingredient gets picked. Like, it was huge for gums lately, which are, by definition, they're just fiber. Like, everyone's keen on fiber, but as soon as you read gum on the ingredient list, then that's bad. Of course, if I would eat like a few spoonfuls of guar gum right now, I would get horrible digestive issues, but who does that? But yeah, I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, brands started to pick on that, and then they developed a protein powder with like, oh, this is free of gums, so it's better for you. So everyone from that concluded, okay, these gums are terrible for you. And we seem to play this game every few years with like a certain ingredient that gets demonized, potentially gets replaced with another ingredient, only to make that the new bad guy a few years down the line, to sell a new product, a new ingredient, like some sort of novelty. And it doesn't only happen in nutrition. I did work a little bit in skincare before, and there it's pretty much the same. Like, all of these free from claims, like it's free from this, free from that. Most of these things in the concentrations that they appear in these products won't do any harm.
It's finding a common enemy, I think. Like, have to find an enemy to then sell something. Like, oh my God, like this now is bad. We need to, demonize this to then sell the next thing. But in a few years, that thing will then become bad. We need to find the next thing. And then it's kind of the same as I don't know what it's like everywhere in the world, but the fortification of bread in the UK has to have iodine in it, because nobody's getting enough iodine. However, the fortification is now being demonized because, oh my God, they're sticking these random ingredients in. They're sticking in iodine so you don't fucking die. You don't have a iodine deficiency. And then, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's because people don't have the basic knowledge of these things, so they kind of just go with hoping the brand is telling the truth. But a lot of the time, the brand is trying to sell you a product, so it needs the worry. It needs to be driven by something.
Yeah. And I like whenever I get comments or questions or something like that, like taking the guar gum as an example again, I occasionally have people who message and like, oh, why is this in there? I heard it's bad for you. And I always try to dive into like science literature and see where this is coming from. And especially there, like I found so many studies where it was actually shown to be really good for people and it was used as a supplement in itself for like things like appetite regulation and like for the gut microbiome because it is fiber in the end. Like that's how it thickens the protein shake in the end. But then, of course, you have studies that correlate a higher intake of gums with worse health outcomes. But then when you look into the details, it's because a lot of processed foods contain a lot of gums. So if someone's diet is mostly processed foods, they will have worse health outcomes. But is it really the gum? Or is it the fact that they just eat a shit ton of processed food and no fresh fruits, vegetables, and so on?
And a lot of the time, it is very much that. It's very much bad health outcomes are from the ultra processed foods, not the person eating a balanced diet with maybe some things in between. Those studies are never done on those people. It's always the ones that have like the worst possible diet, or complete rat studies, rodent studies, honestly, as well.
Because rodents are a lot easier to control and put into a controlled environment. It must be insanely difficult to run an actual nutrition or exercise study with human test subjects because, I mean, you can't just lock them into a room for 5 years and control every single thing they eat. They do those kinds of studies, but usually for like, I don't know, 1 or 2 days. Or weeks, max.
I don't think it's, ethically viable to even lock somebody away for like 5 years and feed them. And this is why you can't really do controlled studies on, for instance, the carnivore diet, because it's not ethically okay to be feeding somebody that amount of red meat and nothing else.
As long as they're human. If they're animals, it's sadly okay.
Yeah, apparently, it is. Yeah, like autonomy's out the window when it comes to that one.
Yeah.
Like, you're not human. You're kind of fucked a lot of the time. How do you get flavors into protein powders, I guess? Like, because I would say, like, personally, your banana bread one is by far the best flavor.
Thank you.
However, like, when you look at like the huge array of like protein powders, you can look on the back sometimes and there's like zero evidence that this could be chocolate because it doesn't have like a cow powder or anything else like that in it. But how do flavors come into existence? Because you do get some of these very kind of like ultra clean, for the people listening, that was quote unquote clean, that have zero ingredients apart from like, 3 or 4, but have a taste. For instance, I'm just wondering how like flavors or a flavor profile even appears in a protein powder.
I mean, the protein isolates don't have, ideally, they don't have much of a flavor, and some have these really weird off notes. And then there are some that taste okay, like if you go more into the nuts and seeds, but mostly they taste better because they still retain a fair amount of fat. So that probably helps with the flavor profile. But the more you isolate them, the less flavor they will have on their own. So what you can do is you can use stuff like cocoa powder or banana powder, as I have in the banana bread as well, or like cinnamon, as is in the banana bread as well. And then you can use aroma compounds. They can either be synthetic aromas or they can be natural aromas. Speaking as a chemist, you can make aroma compounds nature identical in a lab. It will be the same molecule having the same flavor. You just make one in the lab and the other one you extract from some natural source. But people are quite scared of the synthetic variant for no reason. But it's this like natural fallacy, like just because it's coming from nature doesn't necessarily make it safer, healthier, whatever. And there's nothing to say that a natural vanilla flavor has ever seen a vanilla bean, because as per legal definition, it just needs to come from some natural source. And I think a lot of the vanilla flavor is made from like wood chips from like the wood industry, because there's a chemical in there you can modify it quite easily to get your vanillin.
I had no idea that. It's very much. I think I've always just kind of like wanted, because like there'll be some really obscure flavors out there. And you're like, how is this in this powder? Like how does it taste like this? Like, for instance, obviously the banana bread one does have like some banana like powder in it or banana extract, and like that clearly gives it a taste of banana. But sometimes that's just kind of like a multitude of ingredients in protein powders. I'm like, how do they all appear to create this one flavor?
Yeah, what I do is I try to combine the natural flavor source, like in that case, banana powder, with aroma to give it like a more complex and nice flavor profile. Because if you would only use the banana powder, you would need so much of it to get a deep, nice flavor that it would be 50% protein and 50% like just carbs from the banana powder. So I'm adding aroma on top of that to have like a nice balanced flavor profile. But if you use only aroma compounds, you get these like you just taste that there's something missing. Like you get this weird candy banana flavor that most banana proteins have, and it's just not nice. So it's this balance that I'm always trying to strike between not too sweet, not too over flavored, the flavor profile being clear and there and recognizable, but not this like artificial, weird candy flavor.
Yeah, there's such weird flavors coming out. These as I've said, like I get sent quite a few things, and I've had some very weird flavors come through, or some flavors that I don't feel like need to be a flavor, and I'm kind of like, why? Those ones are the ones that always come from America. They're kind of like, hey, what can we do?
Yeah.
And it's always like the most mental flavor. I probably won't name any, because I think if any of the brands ever listen to this, they know I'm talking about them. But one thing that you do have in yours is extra leucine.
Yes.
And for people not knowing what leucine is, or why there's extra leucine in there, what is and why is leucine needed?
So first of all, it is an amino acid. It's an essential amino acid. You have it in almost every protein source. It's also a BCAA, so a branched chain amino acid. So within your big pool of amino acids, you have some that are non-essential, which means your body can make them yourself. And you have some that are essential, which means your body cannot make them itself, and you have to get them in through the food you eat. Within those essential amino acids, you have the BCAAs, your branched chain amino acids. You might know them because the supplement industry tried super hard to sell BCAAs. Already, I think 15 years ago, they were like the big recovery supplements, because we do know that BCAAs are incredibly important for muscle growth and for muscle recovery. The problem is if you only supplement these and you don't have all of the other nice amino acid building blocks, it's no use, because even if your muscle synthesis pathways get activated, if they have no building blocks to actually build new muscle from, it's slightly useless. So if anyone's asking if I would recommend BCAA supplements, no, you're probably way better off just having a complete protein powder, or at least an essential amino acid supplement, which also contains the BCAAs immediately. But yeah, within those BCAAs, leucine is or was identified as like the most important one to really activate your muscle synthesis pathways. And there were then a bunch of studies that showed that you have to have a certain amount of leucine in a portion of protein to activate this pathway, so that your body starts with the muscle synthesis. And sadly, a lot of plant-based protein sources are notoriously low in leucine, especially when you compare it to whey protein. So some people start to say, well, plant-based protein is less effective than whey protein because it doesn't contain sufficient leucine to activate this pathway. So you're losing out on gains by consuming this protein powder versus an animal-based one. And that was like the main point I wanted to counter, which is why I added extra leucine to the protein powder to bring it to the same level as you can find in whey protein and have like this really balanced, really, really good amino acid profile. It didn't make formulation easier because leucine by itself tastes absolutely disgusting. So you have to really work with flavors that like work well with it, and you have to like buy it really fresh because the older the leucine in itself gets, the nastier it starts to taste. But we got all of that under control. So that's the main reason why I add leucine. There's so much more to this whole leucine thresholds that I don't know how deep you want to dive.
Oh, we can dive deep. We can dive deep on the leucine threshold. So I think that's something that a lot of people, once again, people can get scaremongered online about, not being vegan because you're never going to reach your leucine threshold, so you can't thrive as, let's say, an athlete or build muscle. And so go as deep as you want on leucine. You can go ahead.
Because in the spirit of transparency, so I'm advertising it. I'm like, look, this like one portion of this protein powder has 21 plus grams of total protein and 2.5 grams of leucine, which is often hailed as like, the leucine threshold. But actually, it really depends on your training level, what your leucine threshold is. Like if you're a well-trained athlete, you might need less leucine to actually activate your muscle protein synthesis because your body is more primed to it and more responsive to it as it is. The same in reverse, as you get older, you might need a higher overall protein intake and you might need more leucine in your protein to activate the same pathways because your body is like losing the ability to activate this sufficiently. So the threshold goes up and down with your training level. That's the one thing. And the other thing is you don't eat protein in isolation a lot. A protein shake is probably one of the very few instances, or if you have a protein shake after your workout and then you only have your next meal a few hours later, that's probably the only instance where your body gets an isolated source of protein, and where it is important or where it does make a difference how much leucine you have in the protein. Whereas if you just eat a normal balanced diet, your body doesn't forget the meal you had previously. Like the amino acids go into a pool and your body is really, really smart at combining them and taking what it needs. So there's also a bunch of studies that show that this leucine threshold thing becomes less and less important the more varied your diet is and the more varied your protein uptake during the day is. It still stands for protein that's consumed in isolation, like in a protein shake, it is still important, but you do not need to pick apart and calculate every single meal you eat in order to include enough leucine in this one particular meal, unless you're eating the same meal over and over and over again, and that's literally the only thing you eat, which nobody does.
Yeah, well, there's a certain community online at the moment that apparently only eat one thing in isolation.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
Oh no, I wasn't trying to pick about your argument. I was for the ones that tell me constantly that you need a varied diet. They're like, oh, you can just eat this and you've got all the vitamins and minerals you need.
No. So I am like still happy I have the added leucine in my protein powder because for the protein shake use case scenario, it does still make sense. It takes the argument away that it's somehow in some scenarios less effective than a whey protein shake. But again, I think like so many other things, it's not something people should necessarily obsess over.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the person. Like if you're a high performing athlete and you obviously absolutely please look into like getting your leucine, but for the average, mum of 3 just trying to get through her day, it is not a massive issue.
No, and I think you still get plenty, probably. I mean, it depends on what your diet looks like.
Yeah. I think, it's very much, if you're eating maybe a diet of, rice and like beans and, more of the whole food sources of protein, then maybe, yeah, it could be an issue if you would only eat those constantly every day and not really look into any other kind of like tofu, tempehs, satans, things like that. But if you're eating a varied diet, it's probably not an issue for the large majority of people that aren't these kind of like athletic people.
And if you're not constantly scraping at the low end of like your daily protein intake. Because
Which
obviously, the more total protein you eat, the more total leucine you'll add to your pool during the day.
It actually does surprise me still, the very low amount that people do manage to get on a day-to-day basis, because I don't know if I'm just in kind of a bubble sometimes, that I'm kind of like, oh, it's pretty easy, like, because like my 3 meals a day consist of, you know, going into the 150s, and then realize that not everybody has that knowledge. And I think it's probably the same with you as well. Like, I don't know if you still calculate your protein at all these days, or it's just kind of like second nature.
No, I mean, I have my scoop of protein powder in my morning oats, and as I was saying before, my breakfast never changes, so there's not much brain power needed there. And then I just include protein sources in every meal, and I have to say nowadays, like, a lot of my meals are even heavily like just bean and lentil based with no additional tofu, tempeh, and so on. But I also have like an afternoon snack, and that might be protein heavier again. So I'm not necessarily including the very, very protein dense sources into every single one of my meals, but I think I still get plenty during the day.
And you also have an understanding of protein.
Yes, that helps.
that really helps. There's another thing is no sucralose, and this is a thing that I'd never really thought about, but apparently sucralose is an issue for a lot of people. So what
It is.
I
So
guess.
I think I just posted something on TikTok about this actually, but yeah, the main reason for me not to add sucralose in the beginning was not that I wanted to make a particularly quote unquote clean, I hate the term so much, protein powder, but more that I didn't like the taste. Like sucralose is insanely sweet, so even the tiniest amount will produce an insanely sweet protein powder. And then for me, it's also one of these sweet tastes that really sticks and lingers. So you might have the protein with the sucralose in it, and like 2 hours later, you can still like kind of taste it. And I always hated that. And then also, again, for me personally, but I know a lot of people share this, my stomach really doesn't enjoy having too much sucralose. So for me, having the protein back then from another brand in the morning and then maybe have like a sugar-free drink or something at lunch maybe already put me over the edge, and I felt like really bloated from it. It took me really long to find out what it was. And then cutting back on the sucralose actually was what helped me personally. Again, I tried to look into it. I couldn't really find a proper scientific base for it. It's like all very anecdotal, but it's a whole heap of people with the same sensation. So yeah. I took that for one. So it's not in there because I want to demonize it or anything. It was a taste preference and a tolerability preference that I know I share with a lot of other people. Yeah, and then, recently it seems to transpire more and more that you really shouldn't heat sucralose. And I know a lot of people use their protein powder in like a hot porridge or they bake with it. And as soon as you have it consistently over, I believe it's 180 degrees, so your classic baking temperature, I would say, it can actually break apart and have potentially carcinogenic breakdown products. So that's not great. And the EFSA is currently, I think that they're not banning it, but they're not allowing any new applications in baked goods, for example, for that exact reason, because they're like, well, we cannot say for sure that it's safe.
Yeah, I think it's probably kind of best to stay clear, but I didn't realize that it was something that if you heat up, that it just kind of, it can do that. It's the same as I found out the other day after doing this a multitude of times throughout the years, that if you leave creatine, for instance, in, let's say, the fridge overnight inside a yogurt or something, it's not effective, or maybe still be effective, but not at the same rate as, you know, if you were to have it just out of the packet and stir it in.
Yeah, now that creatine is like becoming more and more and more mainstream, there's a lot coming out about it. So essentially, I mean, this is this is something that happens to a lot of powdered compounds. As soon as you put them in solution, they will be way more susceptible to breakdown. Just because you're giving the molecule like more surface area around it, where stuff like oxygen can attack it, or acids or whatever. So as soon as you dissolve it, you limit the shelf life of whatever it is you dissolve. And for creatine, it's breaking down to creatinine quite quickly, apparently, which I always have to think about now, because I think there's a big German brand that is now launching like a bunch of creatine yogurts and creatine drinks and stuff. And I wonder if they've done their testing for breakdown products, or how they keep it stable if they do so.
Oh, that's the thing. But there was a few scandals last year that got exposed to people selling creatine gummies. But obviously, once creatine gummies are created, obviously they've been sitting in, with shelf life, and people taking one a day for maybe like a year, for instance, that there's zero creatine left in it. It's just literally basically a gummy. You might as well just be buying a gummy from a shop without any creatine in. So, and there's a lot of brands that do have these creatine gummies as well. And I don't know if they're now working on keeping this stable, or if it's kind of, I don't know if it possibly can when you have to dissolve it and create something.
Yeah, I've been to a big like nutraceuticals trade show earlier this year, and there were still a lot of creatine gummies and like creatine chews and stuff like that around. I bet ever since, because it was a big scandal with these creatine gummies, I think. So they must have worked on it in some capacity. I'm sure there's something you can do in the processing. I'm pretty sure when you make gummies, it needs to be quite hot for like the material before it solidifies. So maybe by adding the creatine at a later stage when it's already cooled down or something, you can probably do something. And a gummy is not the worst medium, I'd say, because it's still like quite dry, quote unquote. But I don't get the beverages.
Yeah, there's, weirdly enough, so like the beverages are strange for me, because I don't know how they're keeping that stable. Obviously the gummies have their own issues. However, there was a brand in Australia that used to, the mock meat mints with added creatine. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like, it probably wasn't needed. Like, this was never needed. But I don't know if they were trying to make an actual replica of meat and having exactly the same as what you would get from meat. I'm like, you've kind of gone too far with this one. But also, I don't know how long that stays shelf stable when you diluted it and created a mince product.
Yeah, I guess maybe the same thing is happening that happened to protein. Like, we get the proteinification of everything, and now we get creatine into everything. Yeah, both isn't really necessary, in my opinion.
The
I know
proteinification is what, like, you can't go anywhere without having protein. Everything. Like, I've been sent some. I've got it right here. Actually, I probably won't share. I won't share it on camera what brand it is, but a waffle protein bar. Why? Like,
I mean,
a waffle bar was great.
Yeah, I mean, I like a protein bar, but they are in the end a glorified candy to some extent, because most of them have just like as many carbs, chocolate, fats, whatever, unless you really make them with a ton of sweeteners and so on. And then the question is like, how much am I gaining from eating this versus eating a normal sized chocolate bar and maybe having something else for dinner?
And a lot of people, I don't think, realize the fact that obviously if you break down the back of like the nutrition, that it's not normally a protein bar. You're normally eating a carb bar or a fat bar, but because the way it looks like a protein bar. But once you work out the calories in it, it's normally coming from fats or carbs more than it's protein, therefore no longer a protein bar.
Yeah. I mean, it's something, it has its place. Like, I would definitely take protein bars when I go on a long hike or something, because they store well. You don't need to refrigerate them. You have a more balanced macro profile in there. If I know I'm not going to eat anything else for a while, then I would go for it. But it's not something I would have like as my daily snack. I mean, it's the same as for electrolytes. Everyone fucking loves electrolytes at the moment, and there's like, it seems like you can't have a normal glass of water anymore because it won't hydrate you if there are no electrolytes in it. But I would say 98% of people probably don't need it. Like if you're not going out to run a half marathon or something, like if you're not exercising for like more than 90 minutes, you probably don't need electrolytes. And people say, oh, but I feel so much better. Yeah, it's probably because your water tastes like something, so you drink more of it. So it's just the drinking more, not the electrolytes in it.
This is the conversation I keep having. I'm like, if you're sitting in an air-conditioned office constantly and just working at a computer and not doing exercise and maybe walking to a coffee shop and that's your only source of exercise, put down the electrolytes. You do not need the electrolytes. It's wild. But I'm guessing with that, then there's probably not a WAM electrolyte powder coming out anytime soon.
Not anytime soon, no. This is like, I would love to have it at some point as like a product for the endurance athletes among my clients, but at the moment that pool is like very, very small, so it's not a product I can launch at the moment with a good conscience. Like I'm sure it would sell like crazy because electrolytes have the best marketing at the moment. And I think they do it because, I mean, bottom line, it's like a bunch of salts. So they're insanely cheap to produce and you can sell them for an insane amount of money because everyone wants them at the moment. But
yeah, and I think obviously with you being so honest about your marketing, you'd be like, you probably don't need this.
No, it's like whenever like people ask me questions about any of my products, honestly, of like, like protein powder, like how often a day should I take this? Like I should probably tell them, oh, you must take 2 to 3 scoops a day to be healthy or something. I'm like, well, it depends. What does the rest of your diet look like? Like how much of what are you eating? How much are you exercising? What are your goals with the exercise? It depends on so many factors. And I do not want to be the person that tells people to like, I don't know, skip meals and have a protein shake instead, or just like cram in protein in shake form whenever you have the opportunity. Like it's just not who I am. It's not what I want my brand to be. Like I'm the first person that will tell you should like try to eat as many whole foods first and like cover as much as you can of your daily protein from that. Ideally, we wouldn't need protein powder at all, but the world isn't perfect. Our lives aren't perfect. It's a very affordable, hyper convenient source of protein, especially in a pinch. And that's why I think it's a good product.
Yeah, there's ideal world not needed, but also it is that convenience. Like
exactly,
my day is made easier by I get shat on quite a lot when I say I use protein powders as someone that preaches nutrition online. They're like, why are you not getting it all from foods? Because I don't want to, Gary, okay?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Sometimes I want my oats to have something else in it. Also, I like the taste.
Exactly. It makes my oats taste nice. It makes me not have to obsess over every other meal I eat during the day. I can go out for lunch if a friend invites me and have like, I don't know, something that's entirely carb-based, like some pasta with tomato sauce. Yeah. And I know I can have a protein shake later and it's fine. Like, we don't have to overcomplicate everything. And the best diet is the one that gets you what you need. And that is easy to maintain over a very, very long time. And if protein powder helps you make it easier, then by all means.
But Anna, bioavailability. Like plants aren't bioavailable. Like, so protein powder made from plants is not bioavailable.
Well, you asked me about the extraction process before, so essentially there you have it. That's the thing. Yes, the protein that's in a like raw bean is probably not the most bioavailable one, but who eats raw beans? I mean, I think it's pretty unhealthy because beans, when they're not heat treated, like actually can be toxic.
Yeah, this is the only time I'll be like, yes, maybe worry about lectin, not electrolytes, if you're eating only raw beans.
So please, like, soak and boil your beans. But yeah, even then, like, even if you have the boiled bean, yes, if you eat a lot of that, your body still has to like digest through a bunch of fiber and starches to actually get to the protein, and you might not extract 100% of the protein that's in the bean from the bean. But in your protein powder isolate, like it's in the name, like the digestion part and the removal of secondary plant compounds like the fiber, the starches is already done for you. So it hits your stomach, it hits your intestines as like the pure protein, which is very easily absorbed by your body, especially compared to the original plant source. And then in terms of can the body effectively use it, if it's a well-formulated protein powder that contains your essential amino acids in the right amounts, your body can use it perfectly fine.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people, they, especially on comments, will be like, oh, well, the DS score or the PDCAS scores. And I'm like, do you know what those mean? Or do you know? And a lot of people don't know. They've heard something online. And I'm like, so if you look at, eggs whey isolate casein, like one is obviously the highest possible score, and that's probably why you get your gold standard protein powders. But also soybeans also have one, like they are also
Yeah.
at the top scale. So it feels like a straw man argument all the time with those, where they're kind of like, hey, but also I don't think people understand what those scores are, because obviously it's digestibility and the bioavailability, but people just use words not knowing. But what are like DS scores and PDCASs?
Well, you have the composition of your individual amino acids, so the body can actually use them for what it needs to use them for. Primarily, I guess, building new muscle tissue or tissue in general, but also your hormones, for example, depend on your amino acid intake. So it's the combination or the percentages of the individual amino acids that determine how well your body can use the protein from this one source. But here also we're coming back to the fact that you're not eating the same thing all the time. So by varying your meals and your protein sources, you will accumulate a little bit of everything. So it also becomes less and less relevant.
Creatine. Creatine has become another thing that obviously is more and more known about. We don't have we are starting to get the creatinification of everything. However, people assume, and like once again, I think it's the same as kind of the protein powders years ago. Obviously, it came with a muscly guy on the front, and creatine used to come with like muscly guys in the front. Oh, people used to assume creatine may be in steroids. I think, yeah, Rita said, what is creatine? Why creatine? How creatine?
Where to start? I think one thing that surprises people quite often is that your body actually makes a certain amount of creatine on its own, like by itself. It's not something that got cooked up in a lab specifically as a supplement. It is a compound that is naturally present in our muscle tissue because our body makes it itself. But you can also get it from your diet if you eat other beings' muscle tissue, which sounds gross, is gross.
Very gross.
Yeah. So yeah, you can get it through your diet. You can get it through supplementation. Your body makes a little bit itself from amino acids, by the way. There we are again. And the reason why it needs it and why most of it is in your muscle tissue is that in your muscle, you have certain energy pathways. And the energy generation pathway you need for like really quick, short bursts of energy, like a few seconds. If you sprint, if you have a like very heavy rep of a certain weight, your body uses ATP, which is like your energy source. And to regenerate that ATP and keep this energy cycle going, your body uses creatine. So you can maybe get like one more second or split second by having more creatine stored in your muscle to regenerate just a little bit more of that ATP to keep going. So what it does when you supplement is you have like a higher buffer there, basically. So you have a slightly higher output in your training, which means you can generate a higher stimulus on your muscle which will then lead to more muscle growth over time. So it just gives you an edge in your performance, in your training performance. So it does make sense for athletes to use it. There's a strong indication it also makes sense for like elderly people to use it, just to maintain a little bit more of that muscle function. There are now more and more studies coming up about like the whole brain health aspect of it, because obviously your brain needs an insane amount of energy to keep up with all the processes that is responsible for on the daily. But I always tell people to use them with a grain of salt. I know they're the holy grail of creatine marketing at the moment, and every company like shouts about, oh, you'd like everyone needs creatine, not only the athletes, because of the brain benefits, and like it's less brain fog and women in perimenopause and whatnot. The problem is that these studies are done with like very high amounts of creatine you would not use in the sports context. Like usually as an athlete, you would supplement with 3 to 5 grams a day. But these studies start at like 20 grams a day, and you don't even want to take that much creatine in like one go. You would want to like divide it up into smaller portions and have them during the day. But that's where these studies start. Some use even higher amounts of daily creatine supplementation, and the study groups are still quite small. The effects they can be seen, but not very consistently. So it's an interesting area of research, and it's definitely something to have an eye on. But we don't know enough yet to say like for certain that creatine boosts your brain or whatever. Anecdotal evidence at most. But
once again, someone that owns a creatine brand as well.
yeah, I know.
The perfect What's the difference between, there's creatine and then it's Creapure?
Well, creatine in supplement form, like most of it is creatine monohydrate. So it's basically a stable form of creatine with like one H2O molecule attached to it. You have other forms of creatine, like you have, I think, chloride and whatnot. There are a few like super fancy forms. Some like link it to other amino acids, but it's mostly just marketing. Like I wouldn't waste my money on anything that's not creatine monohydrate. It's the cheapest form. It's the most available form. It's the one that 90-something% of the studies are done with. So creatine monohydrate, and Creapure is basically just creatine monohydrate that comes out of one company in Germany that produces it, and they gave it the trademarked name Creapure. And you have to have a trademark license to put this like little Creapure seal on your packaging when you're using it. And it's basically it basically just tells the customer that this creatine was produced in Germany under all of the quality standards that come with it. You now have Creavitalis, which is from the same brand or from the same producer. It is also just creatine monohydrate. It's just a finer powder, so it dissolves a little bit better, but it's a lot more expensive. So I decided to go with Creapure, just because I also want my products to be affordable. That's why I opted against the Creavitalis. I know people like it because it dissolves a little bit better, but in the end, if you're a little bit more price sensitive, it's the exact same compound.
Yeah, I was always curious because obviously there's so much talk about, creatine, and then is Creapure then better? I'm pretty sure it's kind of ish the same, but obviously different names, maybe finer, maybe easier to dissolve, maybe, but the benefits realistically the same.
Yeah, and you have the very controlled, very guaranteed quality, whereas you can get creatine monohydrate from different producers in China, for example. Like you can buy it from a bunch of different producers. The quality might be just as high as for Creapure for some of them, but for some others not. So you definitely need to run those through a lab and make sure that every batch you get is from a certain quality. And this is something that I think more and more of us in the industry might have to do, because since the big creatine boom, Creapure has become quite scarce. It's really hard to get your hands on it. I do honestly not know when I can do my next restock. Like I still have stock, But I was already told that I cannot order any at the moment because there is none. Because it has had such a boom over the last year that the producer is now building another factory to produce more, but it won't be operational until like mid next year. So I might not even be able to source Creapure for like another year.
That's absolutely wild. I know from the start of the majority of your videos is that you mentioned that you hate diet culture, which I think we all do. But I didn't know, like, I think for me, I also have a hatred towards diet culture. But is there specific things at the moment that you keep seeing popping up in the supplement industry that are kind of like this is just much like the gender specific? Is there anything that really kind of aggravates you to the point that you're just like, this just doesn't need to be a thing?
There's so many things. I think especially coming out of the supplement corner, it's this like Pilatesification of everything. Like I have absolutely nothing against Pilates. Like if you love doing Pilates, please by all means do it. But so many supplement brands like lean so much into this, let's call it Pilates aesthetic at the moment. And using the woman who does Pilates as like the one and only marketing creative that they can come up with to sell any sort of supplement. And it just takes so much away from how broad and exciting exercise can be, because not everyone loves the same thing. But I feel like just like we all got pressured to like go running to lose weight a while ago, now I feel like all women collectively get pushed into doing Pilates because it's like the one and only form of exercise to get the one body type, allegedly, that's trending right now. And I don't know, it's not really helping women or people in general to experiment a bit and find a form of moving their body they can actually fall in love with and then do for a very long time.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that everything is, Pilates based as of the moment, whether it's or like Liquori or any of these other exercises that are relatively near enough the same. And if you love doing it, you love doing it. That's great. Like good for you. But there is so much exercise out there that aren't just kind of this. For the last however many years it has been obviously like running or doing some kind of like vibration plates or things like that to get you long, lean, and toned, for instance, instead of weightlifting or actually like CrossFit or whatever fill in blank. There's so many, whether that be football, rugby, or whatever it is. But
it's very sad because it's tied to this like one body type, which again is like nobody is guaranteed to get the quote unquote Pilates body from like doing only Pilates. Like genetics plays such a massive role. Your nutrition plays such a big role. And why do we all have to want the same kind of body in the first place? It's just like this is 2000s all over again. Like we all have to be like as slim as possible. Now it comes with like the little thing. Oh, you don't only want to be skinny, you want to be toned. So you want to have like some visual muscle definition. It's like, well, if I lose enough body fat, like any bit that I have will become visible eventually. Doesn't mean it's good for you.
Yeah, I think that kind of definitely runs into my big hatred at the moment, which I think we touched on slightly earlier, which was obviously gender specific things. Like there's nothing supplement wise that is for one gender and one gender only.
Exactly.
It's good marketing tactics, but also a lot of the things that are being stuck into certain formulations, whether that be protein powder, whether that be supplements, whether that be, whatever, don't really have many, shown benefits. People will be like, oh, it's, proven. I'm like, it's not proven. Like it's not, or these, there's a lot of, ashwagandha or like, whatever else going into being like, oh, it's going to help, your fertility. There's a lot more that needs to go into your life and a protein powder with like ashwagandha in it that's going to help your fertility. Like maybe a doctor.
Yeah.
A supplement brand's not helping that.
No, there's the whole issue with like the cycle syncing now, which is super trendy as well for women.
And
Which
speed cycling as well.
Yeah, and it's like, by all means, if you have very painful periods, then yes, like take it slow, like listen to your body. But there's just as many women who feel great around that time and maybe feel at their strongest, and just to give any sort of blanket advice around like cycle syncing, be that nutrition wise, be that exercise wise, there's just no scientific basis for it either. If anything, we have a scientific base to say it should be down to the individual, and women should be assessed individually, and then training can be adjusted if it's needed.
No, absolutely. There's also, I think, adding with another thing that really kind of like frustrates me. I think this also frustrates you as well. Is the fact that sticking so many random ingredients in things just to make it sound better, to hike up the selling point, to make it look like there's specific things it can do to your body, then realistically it's just adding shit in there for the sake of adding shit in there. And for instance, maybe fat soluble vitamins or those sort of, but unless you're having a fat source of it, you are getting rid of those straight away, like, because it's not going along, like it's not going along with it.
Or we have these like super duper combo, you only need this one sachet a day and you're covering all you could ever possibly need in terms of nutrients. But then you look at it and it's physically impossible to put sufficient quantities of some of the things you might need into this tiny sachet.
The proprietary blends. Actually, no. To be fair, I'm happy to call out this one brand for it, and that's AG1.
It's the brands that is known for it. Yeah,
yeah. Like it's very. They're never going to sponsor this podcast, so like never. But yeah, like I think they got so big because obviously they have people like Joe Rogan like promote. But realistically, when you look at like, they can't tell you how much of that's in there, but it's a proprietary blend. They can't tell you the amount. But we know from obviously the largest amount first is, or the largest is what is going in there first, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. For that one scoop, you're realistically probably not getting what's in there. So even if there is like 4,000 vitamins and minerals and whatever else, and blessings and hope, what it gives you, is relatively small. And where a lot of these things fight for each other or fight for their absorption compared to others, are you getting the whole amount of it? Probably not.
I mean, that's the other thing. Is what's the famous couple? I think it's magnesium and zinc.
Magnesium and zinc.
If you take them together, they compete for absorption. So
and the same with I think it's also iron and copper. Like taking too much of that, so not that you can really take too much of copper, but also it's it's one of those things that they fight for absorption. There's, I don't know if that one's correct, but there's a variety.
Yeah.
And I think as well, at the moment, it's very much the proteinification of everything, which is wild to say, when you also own a protein brand.
I know, but that's why I keep it at the protein powder, because that's just the most cost efficient. It's the most shelf stable. It's the one you can add or not add to whatever you want, whenever you want. I would really love to do protein bars at some point, because I know that they can be very handy for some people. But that's almost already where it stops. Like, I don't want a protein granola or even a ready-to-drink protein shake. I'm already like, eh.
Would you consider doing any other supplements at some point, like down the line, or is it very much we're just going to kind of stay with, creatine, protein powder, and maybe an electrolyte?
I would love to build out the staples, or what I consider staples, a little bit. So I would love to have a vegan omega supplement, like an algae oil soft gel or something down the line, because I think that's a very good potentially necessary, especially if you're vegan, you don't eat any fish, and you're not eating algae on the regular. I think that's a good one to have. Yeah, pretty much anything that I would use myself on the daily, but the list is short, to be honest. And then we're already going, as I said, like more into the specialities with like a hydration supplement or like electrolytes for like really endurance athletes. You could say the same for like any carb heavy supplements, like intra workouts. I think for some people, a non-stim, like a caffeine-free pre-workout would potentially be a good thing. I am not using that at the moment because I go training at a time that is quite comfortable for me, but I have used them in the past when I had to train like either very early in the morning or very late in the evening. And especially for the late evening application, it always bothered me that most of the pre-workouts on the market contain caffeine because it was not something I wanted to have a lot of at like 8, 9 p.m. in the evening. So I mixed my own. I think I actually still have the individual ingredients I use to make like my own caffeine-free pre-workouts in my kitchen.
I think because obviously I've actually got you down here, you know, for anybody watching, the banana breads, and obviously you've got 3 other amazing flavors. However, is there any other flavors coming out down the line, or is there any kind of flavors that you want to create? Because I know it is a huge array that you could, you know, come from or go from. There's like every flavor possible on the planet, but is there something that you're looking to kind of like create or make?
Yes. So at the moment, I'm working on a coconut and a strawberry flavor. Reason being that I usually do polls on my Instagram stories where I take all of the client feedback that I'm getting into account, and then I let people vote between flavors. So what they want next, basically. And in the last pool of flavors, coconut and strawberry came out as the winners. I've polled them a bunch of other times, but very frustratingly, it almost always ends 50-50. So I'm working on them in parallel now. I don't know which one's going to be the next one to launch because I don't get a very clear indication from my customers. I think both will come eventually. It's just the question which one I do first. And I actually had a clear protein almost finished in development as well. The problem is that the vegan clear protein is based on a hydrolyzed pea protein, so like even one purification step more than your regular pea protein to get it to come out clear in a solution with water. And that makes quite a refreshing high protein beverages, which would have been perfect for summer. The problem is that we currently have like extra payments on pea protein, and we have a very, very, very high demand of that because these clear proteins exploded in popularity over the last year. So it got insanely expensive. And for me to sell a product like that, I would have had to price it insanely high. And again, that goes against my standards for myself. Like I want my products to be accessible or as accessible as possible. And I do not want to launch a product where I personally wouldn't be happy with paying that price either. So I kind of shelved that idea again. I hope that by next year, the production capacity catches up so that I can actually realize that product. But yeah, I have to go with the flow. Since I'm entirely self-funded with my brand as well, I don't have any investor backing. I don't have big cash reserves. I need to sell product in order to have enough money to like make the next batch of products. So I can't take super high risks either.
Yeah, of course. Anna, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. For the people that want to check you out, want to check out the brand, want to get your protein powder, want to, you know, support you, where can people find you?
People can find me on social media under the handle at WAM, WAM .fit. And my website, WAMfit, no dot there, just WAMfit.com. And I have to say that sadly, it's only available in Europe, not the UK, not the US.
Yeah. That was a disappointing one when I first found out about you. However, now that I'm in Europe, It's
Yes.
fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry, UK. I have a lot of requests from the UK, but Brexit has made it pretty much impossible for the time being.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
Anna, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure, and I'm grateful for you.
Thanks for having me on the podcast.